Captain Vextar adjusted his ceremonial research sash and gazed smugly at the blue-green planet rotating lazily on his view screen. Earth. Such a primitive little mud ball, really. Perfect for what the Galactic Council had so eloquently termed low-risk behavioral studies of underdeveloped species. The captain's three eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of supreme confidence among his people. After all, he'd been conducting these routine specimen collections for over 200 cycles. Grab a few local creatures, run some tests, publish a paper, collect academic prestige. Simple. Foolproof. What could possibly go wrong? "Status report, Dr. Kleithner," Vextar commanded, his voice carrying that special tone reserved for beings who considered themselves intellectually superior to entire planetary populations. Dr. Kleithner, whose purple tentacles were currently wrapped around a datapad with the enthusiasm of someone about to win a scientific award, practically vibrated with excitement. "Excellent news, Captain. Our scans have identified two perfect specimens. One appears to be a juvenile member of the dominant species, and the other is a small quadrupedal creature with fascinating aggressive tendencies." Aggressive tendencies. Vextar's middle eye narrowed. "Nothing dangerous, I trust." "Oh, hardly. It's barely half a meter long. Our containment systems are rated for creatures 10 times its size. Really, Captain, the biggest challenge will be staying awake during the behavioral analysis." Down on Earth, 8-year-old Tommy Martinez was having what he would later describe as just another boring Tuesday. He'd finished his math homework in record time because, honestly, multiplication tables were for babies, and was now engaged in his favorite pastime, building elaborate booby traps for his older sister, using nothing but rubber bands and strategic furniture placement. "Tommy, dinner in 5 minutes," his mom called from the kitchen. "Just a sec," Tommy replied, carefully adjusting the angle on what he privately called the Sock Launcher 3000. His engineering mind, which his teachers insisted on calling creative problem-solving and his parents preferred to term extremely concerning, was fully engaged. Meanwhile, about 50 yards away in the local nature preserve, a honey badger named Destroyer, though he hadn't chosen the name himself, was having his own version of a routine Tuesday. This mostly involved systematically dismantling a predator-proof garbage can that some overconfident park ranger had installed. Destroyer had opinions about the concept of predator-proof. His opinion was that humans were adorably optimistic and terrible at engineering. The garbage can, which had taken a team of engineers 6 months to design, had taken Destroyer approximately 4 minutes to completely defeat. He was working on minute 5 now, and the garbage can was beginning to question its life choices. High above, Vextar's ship hummed with the quiet efficiency of advanced technology and boundless arrogance. "Begin specimen acquisition," he ordered. The tractor beam descended like a gentle, invisible hand. It was designed to be completely undetectable to primitive civilizations, which was why Tommy noticed it immediately. "Ah, that's new," he muttered, watching his pencils start floating toward the ceiling. His first thought wasn't fear or confusion. It was professional curiosity. After all, this was way cooler than anything he'd managed with rubber bands. The beam lifted him gently through his bedroom window, and Tommy found himself thinking that whoever built this thing had clearly never dealt with human children before. Any decent tractor beam would have accounted for the fact that humans might grab onto things, like, say, the emergency backpack Tommy always kept ready for situations exactly like this one. What? A guy had to be prepared. 50 yards away, Destroyer's reaction to suddenly floating upward was somewhat different. His reaction could be summarized as, "Oh hell no." The honey badger immediately began what could only be described as an aerial tantrum, clawing and biting at something that wasn't technically there. The tractor beam's operators, who had expected docile confusion, were suddenly dealing with a furry ball of concentrated rage that seemed to be personally offended by the laws of physics. "Sir," called Technician Blordix from his station, "the small quadruped appears to be attacking the tractor beam." "That's impossible," Dr. Kleithner sniffed. "It's just light particles. You can't attack light." On the view screen, Destroyer appeared to be winning. "Bring them aboard quickly," Vextar ordered, though a tiny voice in the back of his mind was starting to whisper that maybe, just maybe this Tuesday, was going to be anything but routine. The two specimens materialized in the ship's pristine specimen bay, and for a moment, everything was quiet. Tommy looked around with the bright-eyed curiosity of a kid in the world's most expensive toy store. Destroyer looked around with the smoldering fury of someone who had just been interrupted during important garbage can destruction time. "Fascinating," Dr. Kleithner murmured, studying his readings. The juvenile appears remarkably calm for a primitive being experiencing first contact. Tommy raised his hand. Excuse me, but did you guys just kidnap me? Because I should probably mention that my mom's making spaghetti tonight and she gets really cranky when people are late for dinner. The aliens stared. In all their centuries of specimen collection, none had ever filed a complaint about missing dinner. Dr. Kleithner cleared his throat, which sounded like a garbage disposal trying to sing opera. Begin standard psychological evaluation protocol, he announced to his team. We'll start with the basic intelligence assessment. He activated a holographic display showing simple geometric shapes. Red circle, blue square, green triangle. The kind of test designed for creatures who might have recently figured out that rocks were harder than their heads. Tommy studied the display for exactly 2 seconds. Okay, so you want me to identify the patterns, memorize the sequence, and then predict the next shape in the series, right? It's blue square, but honestly, this is like kindergarten level stuff. Do you guys have anything more challenging, or should I just solve it backwards to save us all some time? Dr. Kleithnar's tentacles went rigid. In 300 years of testing primitive species, he had never encountered a subject who critiqued the methodology before taking the test. Perhaps, he said stiffly, we should move to the problem-solving assessment. He produced what appeared to be an incredibly complex puzzle box, covered in alien symbols and bizarre geometric locks. It had taken the Galactic Council's finest minds 6 months to design, and the average sapient species required anywhere from 12 to 47 hours to solve it. Tommy picked it up, turned it over twice, and twisted something. It opened with a satisfied click. Cool box, he said, handing it back. Though you might want to tell whoever designed it that they left a really obvious structural weak point right here. He pointed to what the aliens had considered the most secure section. One good twist and the whole internal mechanism just bypasses itself. My sister's jewelry box is way harder to crack. Meanwhile, in the adjacent containment area, Destroyer was conducting his own evaluation of alien technology. His assessment method was simple but effective. If it claimed to contain him, he would prove it wrong. The force field barrier hummed with enough energy to stop a charging rhino. Destroyer looked at it with the disdain of someone who had once chewed through a titanium cage because he was bored. He began with what appeared to be a casual sniff around the perimeter. The aliens, watching on their monitors, nodded approvingly. See? Typical animal behavior. Cautious exploration of boundaries. What they failed to understand was that Destroyer wasn't exploring. He was conducting a structural analysis. Honey badgers might not understand energy physics, but they understood weak points better than most engineers. 5 minutes later, the impenetrable force field was flickering like a broken light bulb. That's impossible, squeaked Technician Blortix. The containment field is specifically calibrated for creatures of his mass and strength. Well, Tommy said helpfully from his own cell, maybe you should have calibrated it for creatures of his attitude. That little guy looks seriously annoyed. Dr. Kleithnar was beginning to sweat, which was particularly unpleasant to watch since his species secreted a purple, viscous fluid when stressed. Increase containment field strength by 50%. The force field blazed brighter. Destroyer looked at it the way a professional critic might regard a particularly bad piece of performance art, then proceeded to do something that would give alien physicists nightmares for generations. He ignored it completely. Not in the sense that he couldn't see it, or didn't care about it. He simply decided that the force field's opinion on whether he could leave was irrelevant to his plans. He walked straight through it like it was made of warm jello. Alarms started blaring. Purple lights flashed. Somewhere in the ship's computer system, the words containment breach appeared in letters that managed to convey both urgency and existential despair. How is this possible? Dr. Kleidner shrieked, his tentacles now whipping around in what Tommy recognized as the universal sign of adults having a complete meltdown. Maybe because you're thinking about this all wrong, Tommy suggested conversationally. You're trying to contain creatures based on what you think they should be able to do, but you never asked what they actually can do. That's like trying to childproof a house without understanding that kids can climb. As if to prove his point, Destroyer had somehow gotten under the ceiling and was now hanging upside down, staring at Dr. Kleithnar with the focused intensity of a small furry predator who had just identified his next project. Can someone please explain to me, Captain Vexstar's voice crackled over the intercom, why my ship's computer is now reporting that we are somehow being invaded by our own test subjects? Tommy raised his hand again. Probably because you just discovered that humans are really good at figuring things out, and honey badgers are really good at not caring about things like impossible, or impenetrable, or basic physics. Dr. Kleithnar looked at his readings, then at Tommy, then at Destroyer, who had somehow managed to get inside the force field generator and was now systematically reducing it to its component parts. For the first time in his long and distinguished academic career, Dr. Kleithnar was beginning to suspect that maybe, just maybe, he had severely miscalculated the definition of primitive species. The ship's corridors were filled with the pleasant sounds of advanced alien technology having a nervous breakdown. Warning lights flashed in colors that didn't exist in Earth's spectrum, and the computer kept announcing things like Containment Protocol, 7 failed, and Recommend immediate evacuation to nearest safe galaxy. Tommy had strolled out of his cell about 3 minutes after Destroyer had demonstrated that force fields were more of a suggestion than a rule. The door had been locked with what the aliens proudly called their quantum encryption system. Tommy had opened it by finding the manual override switch, which was helpfully labeled in 17 different languages, including one that looked suspiciously like the pictographs from his favorite video game. Seriously, he muttered to himself as he wandered down the gleaming corridor. Who designs a high secretary prison with an emergency exit button right next to the door? He could hear the aliens running around in circles somewhere behind him, shouting things like, "Initiate Protocol Zeta," and "Where did we put the backup containment units?" It sounded exactly like his teacher's lounge during fire drill practice, if his teachers were purple and had tentacles. That's when he spotted Destroyer. The honey badger was in the middle of what appeared to be a philosophical disagreement with a maintenance robot. The robot was trying to repair some conduits. Destroyer had apparently decided that the conduits were better off as abstract art. "Hey there, little guy," Tommy said, crouching down. Destroyer paused his deconstruction project and looked at Tommy with the calculating stare of someone evaluating a potential business partner. He chittered something that roughly translated to, "Are you also here to mess with these idiots' stuff?" Tommy didn't speak honey badger, but he was fluent in the universal language of, "Let's cause some trouble." He grinned. "I'm Tommy, and I'm guessing you're about as thrilled to be here as I am." Destroyer made a sound that was half growl, half laugh, in 100% agreement. He gestured with one paw toward a nearby access panel, then looked at Tommy expectantly. "Oh, you want me to open that?" Tommy examined the panel. It was secured with what appeared to be a biometric scanner, a numeric keypad, and 3 different types of locks. "Huh, fancy." He pressed his thumb to the scanner, which immediately beeped and flashed green. Apparently the aliens had never heard of the concept that security systems should actually be, secure. The panel swung open, revealing a maze of colorful wires and blinking components. Destroyer dove in with the enthusiasm of a kid opening presents on Christmas morning. If Christmas presents were usually other people's expensive electronics. "You know what?" Tommy said, settling down next to his new partner. "I think we're going to get along just fine." What followed could only be described as a masterclass in the art of systematic chaos. Tommy had the theoretical knowledge, he'd watched every science fiction movie ever made, twice. And Destroyer had the practical application skills, he could break anything, anywhere, for any reason. Together they were like a tiny, furry wrecking crew with a strategic planning department. "Okay, so here's what I'm thinking," Tommy explained, pulling up a holographic ship schematic he'd found in the computer system. "These guys are clearly way too confident in their technology. They've got backups for their backups, but they've never planned for someone who actually understands how their systems work." Destroyer nodded seriously, then pointed to a section of the schematic that controlled life support. No, we don't want to hurt anybody," Tommy said quickly. "We just want to make them realize they've made a really big mistake. Here, look at this." He highlighted the ship's communication array. "If we can get in there, I can send a message to Earth. Let them know where we are." Destroyer chittered approvingly, then gestured toward what appeared to be the ship's main power distribution center. Tommy's eyes lit up. "Oh, you're good. Yeah, if we mess with the power grid, we can cause all sorts of fun problems without actually endangering anyone. I like the way you think, buddy." Down in the control room, Captain Vextar was discovering that commanding a starship was significantly more difficult when the starship was actively being redesigned by an 8-year-old and a honey badger. "Status report," he barked. "Power fluctuations in sections 7 through 12, reported Technician Blordix, his voice climbing toward panic. "Communication array is experiencing what the computer describes as aggressive modifications. And sir, I'm getting readings that suggest our 2 specimens are now working together." "Working together? That's impossible. They're from completely different species. They can't even communicate." On the security monitor, Tommy and Destroyer could be seen engaged in what appeared to be an intense planning session. Tommy was drawing diagrams in the air with his finger, while Destroyer was pointing to various parts of the ship's infrastructure and making emphatic gestures. "Sir," Blordix whispered, "I think they're strategizing." Captain Vextar felt something that his species hadn't experienced in over 1,000 years of galactic dominance. The cold realization that they might be in serious trouble. "Get me Dr. Clithnar," he ordered, "and someone find out exactly what we've brought aboard my ship." In the corridor, Tommy high-fived Destroyer's paw. "All right, partner. Ready to show these guys what happens when you underestimate Earth creatures?" Destroyer's response was a grin that would have made a shark nervous, and a sound that roughly translated to, "Let's wreck this place." What happened next would later be studied in alien military academies as the Martinez Destroyer incident, though most of the professors would require therapy before they could finish teaching the course. Tommy had accessed the ship's main computer using a combination of basic hacking skills learned from YouTube tutorials, and the aliens' apparent belief that password protection was optional. The login screen had asked for authorization, and Tommy had tried password. It worked. "Okay, Destroyer, check this out," Tommy said, pulling up the ship's complete operational manual. "These guys have a file called How to Operate Everything for Dummies. It's like they expected their own crew to forget how their ship works." Destroyer was meanwhile conducting his own research project in applied destruction. He'd discovered that the aliens used a fascinating metal alloy for their wall panels. Fascinating in the sense that it was apparently designed to crumble if you looked at it wrong. Each wall he investigated seemed less structurally sound than the last. "Attention ship's computer," Tommy announced, having figured out the intercom system. "This is Tommy Martinez, and I'm officially filing a complaint about your hospitality. Your guest accommodations were substandard, your entertainment selection was boring, and your snack service was non-existent. I'm giving you 1 star on Yelp." Throughout the ship, aliens stopped what they were doing to stare at their communication panels. In over 2,000 years of space travel, no one had ever threatened them with bad online reviews. "Also," Tommy continued, "I'm currently downloading your complete technical specifications, crew manifests, and what appears to be someone's personal diary. Seriously, Captain Vextar, nobody wants to read about your feelings regarding tentacle grooming products." In the command center, Captain Vextar's 3 eyes went wide with horror. His personal logs were private. They contained his deepest thoughts, his poetry, his secret recipe for baked zlarfish. "How was he accessing restricted files?" Vextar shrieked. "Sir," Technician Blordix reported with the tone of someone delivering particularly bad news, "it appears he's using administrative privileges." "Administrative privileges? How did he get administrative privileges?" "Well, sir, when he logged in with password, the system automatically assumed he was you." While Tommy was busy turning the ship's computer systems into his personal playground, Destroyer was conducting what could only be described as a masterclass in creative engineering failure. He'd discovered that the ship's artificial gravity was controlled by a series of field generators mounted in the walls. Destroyer had opinions about artificial gravity. His opinion was that gravity should come from planets, like nature intended, and that any gravity that came from machines was probably up to no good. 20 minutes later, sections of the ship were experiencing gravity in directions that would have made Einstein file a formal complaint with the universe. "Attention crew," Tommy's voice echoed through the ship again. "You might want to secure any loose objects. My partner here has been making some modifications to your gravity system. Also, you might experience some temporary weightlessness, upside-downness, or occasional sidewayedness. Please keep your tentacles and appendages inside the ride at all times." Dr. Clithnar, who was currently stuck to what used to be the ceiling of his laboratory, managed to activate his communicator. "Captain, we need to consider negotiation." "Negotiation? With test subjects? That's preposterous." "Sir, the small one has just sent a message to something called NASA, informing them of our location, ship specifications, and defensive capabilities. He's also somehow subscribed our communication system to what appears to be 3,000 Earth entertainment channels." The ship's speakers suddenly filled with the cheerful sounds of Earth's daytime television. And now back to The Price is Right. "Make it stop," Vextar wailed. "I'm trying, sir, but every time I change the channel it switches back. And, sir, the small quadruped has somehow gotten into the specimen storage bay." This was particularly problematic because the specimen storage bay contained creatures from 17 different worlds, all of whom had been captured for various research projects. All of whom were now discovering that their escape-proof containment systems had been designed by the same geniuses who thought password was adequate security. Tommy's voice came over the intercom again. Hey, alien guys, you might want to know that Destroyer found your other prisoners and he's got some strong feelings about kidnapping. Also, I don't think that six-legged purple thing is supposed to be glowing like that. Throughout the ship, the sounds of systematic liberation echoed through the corridors. Doors were opening, containment fields were failing, and creatures that hadn't seen freedom in months were rediscovering their capacity for righteous indignation. Sir, Blordix whispered, I think we're about to have a very serious problem. Captain Vexstar, still hanging upside down due to the gravity situation, watched his view screen fill with alerts. Countenment failure. All sections. Structural ingravity. Compromised. Recommend immediate surrender. Surrender? He squeaked. To whom? Tommy's cheerful voice answered over the intercom. Hi there, to us. Tommy Martinez and Destroyer, freelance liberation specialists. We'll be happy to discuss terms, just as soon as someone explains why you thought kidnapping was a good idea. Also, do you guys have any snacks? I'm getting hungry. And Destroyer found your food dispensers, but everything tastes like purple. In the distance, they could hear the sound of what appeared to be a parade of very angry alien creatures marching through the ship's corridors, led by the unmistakable chittering of one extremely satisfied honey badger. Captain Vexstar closed all three eyes and wondered if it was too late to change careers. Tommy had discovered something wonderful about alien technology. It was apparently designed by creatures who had never met a human child, with unrestricted internet access and a grudge. Within an hour, he had not only contacted NASA, but had also somehow managed to patch into the ship's long-range communication array, and was now broadcasting live to what appeared to be the entire Galactic Council. Hello, Galactic neighbors, Tommy announced cheerfully into the communication system. This is Tommy Martinez from Earth, and I'm calling to report a kidnapping. Also, your ship design is terrible, your security is a joke, and whoever programmed your computer should probably consider a career change. On the main view screen in the command center, dozens of alien faces appeared, representing species from across the galaxy. They all wore expressions that roughly translated to, "What the heck is happening here?" High Counselor Zefteria, a dignified being with more eye stalks than strictly necessary, spoke first. Captain Vexstar, please explain why we are receiving a distress call from your test subjects. Vexstar, who was still dealing with gravity pointing in 3 different directions simultaneously, tried to maintain some dignity. There has been a minor complication with the specimen collection. Minor complication? Tommy's voice cut in. Dude, I've turned your ship into a flying circus, my buddy here's liberated your entire prisoner collection, and your computer is now playing the Macarena on infinite loop in the engine room. This isn't a minor complication. This is a complete system failure. As if to prove his point, the sound of the Macarena could indeed be heard echoing through the ship's lower decks, accompanied by what sounded like 17 different species of aliens, trying to figure out the dance moves. Meanwhile, Destroyer had appointed himself Director of Prisoner Liberation and was taking his job very seriously. He'd organized the freed specimens into what could only be described as the galaxy's most diverse and angry parade. There was a crystalline being from the Andromeda sector who kept changing colors to express profanity. A gas-based life form that was literally steaming with indignation, and what appeared to be a sentient plant that was using extremely creative botanical gestures to communicate its feelings about captivity. You know what? Tommy continued, clearly enjoying himself. I think we need to have a serious conversation about consent and interspecies relations. You can't just go around kidnapping people because you think they're primitive. That's like super illegal. Even I know that, and I'm 8. High Counselor Zefteria's eye stalks swiveled to focus on the screen. Young human, you claim to represent Earth? Well, I mean, I wasn't planning to, but since you guys abducted me and I'm the one who's here, I guess I do now. Tommy Martinez, Earth's first and probably youngest intergalactic diplomat. My mom's going to freak when she finds out. Dr. Kleithner, who had managed to unstick himself from the ceiling and was now floating sideways in a corridor, activated his communicator. Counselor, the situation is under control. We simply need to adjust our containment protocols. Containment protocols? Tommy's laugh echoed through the ship. Dr. Kleith, buddy, I hate to break it to you, but your containment protocols were designed by someone who apparently never heard of the concept of thinking outside the box. I got out of your quantum lock with a paperclip. A paperclip I made from a piece of your wall, by the way? The sound of systematic destruction continued to echo through the ship as Destroyer's liberation parade made its way through the corridors. The Honey Badger had discovered the ship's main computer core and was now conducting what appeared to be an interpretive dance critique of alien engineering, using his claws as artistic implements. Also, Tommy continued, I should probably mention that I've downloaded your entire database and sent it to Earth's top scientists. Dr. Peterson at MIT is going to have a field day with your faster-than-light drive specifications. She says thanks, by the way, and wants to know if you guys have ever heard of efficiency optimization. Captain Vexstar made a sound like a deflating balloon. He downloaded our database? Sir, he's also somehow gained access to the Galactic Council's emergency protocols, Technician Blordix reported weekly. And he's filing formal complaints on behalf of every species you've ever abducted. That's right, Tommy said cheerfully. I've got a whole list here. Unauthorized specimen collection, violation of planetary sovereignty, failure to provide adequate guest amenities, and my personal favorite, crimes against basic hospitality. Seriously, you guys didn't even offer us snacks. High Counselor Zefteria's expression was growing increasingly alarmed. Captain Vexstar, how many species have you collected without proper diplomatic contact? The silence that followed was deafening, except for the continuing sounds of the Macarena and what appeared to be a conga line of liberated aliens making their way through the ship's main corridor. Vexstar finally squeaked. Approximately. Several hundred? Several hundred unauthorized abductions? The High Counselor's eye stalks were now pointing in directions that suggested either deep thought or an impending aneurysm. Do you realize what this means? Tommy's voice cut in helpfully. It means you guys accidentally declared war on about half the galaxy without realizing it. Also, the crystalline guy from Sector 7 wants his lawyer to call your lawyer. And the plant thing is composing what I think is a very angry poem about you. I don't speak plant, but it sounds really insulting. In the background, Destroyer could be heard conducting what sounded like a motivational speech to his liberated army, in a language that consisted entirely of chittering, growling, and the occasional sound of alien technology being creatively dismantled. So here's what's going to happen, Tommy announced with the confidence of someone who had just accidentally become the most powerful 8-year-old in the galaxy. You're going to apologize to everyone, you're going to promise to never kidnap anyone ever again, and you're going to give me and Destroyer a ride home. Also, I want snacks for the trip. Good snacks, not the purple stuff. High Counselor Zefteria looked at her fellow council members, then back at the screen. Young human, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we accept your terms. Tommy grinned. Awesome. Oh, and one more thing. My buddy Destroyer here thinks your ship design could use some improvements. He's prepared to offer consulting services. The sound of something large and expensive being systematically reduced to its component parts echoed through the communication system. For a very reasonable fee, Tommy added. Earth's rescue fleet arrived exactly 47 minutes later, which was impressive, considering they'd had to invent faster-than-light travel in the previous 30 minutes using alien specifications that Tommy had helpfully transmitted. Dr. Sarah Peterson from MIT later described it as the most productive coffee break in human history. Admiral Rodriguez, commanding the hastily assembled Earth Defense Fleet, which consisted of 3 repurposed research vessels, a space station, and what appeared to be the International Space Station with some very concerning modifications, opened communications with a tone that suggested he was still trying to process the situation. This is Admiral Rodriguez to Alien Vessel. We're here to retrieve our people. Please prepare for... He paused, looking at his notes. Please prepare for diplomatic negotiations with our official representative, Tommy Martinez, age 8. Admiral, this is Tommy. Thanks for coming, but I think we've got everything under control here. The aliens have agreed to all our terms. Destroyer has successfully liberated about 300 prisoners from 17 different worlds, and I've accidentally become Earth's first intergalactic diplomat. Also, their food really does taste like purple. Through the view screen, Admiral Rodriguez could see the alien ship, which now looked like it had been redesigned by someone with very strong opinions about traditional engineering principles. Parts of it were rotating in directions that seemed to violate several laws of physics, and there appeared to be some kind of conga line visible through the transparent sections. Captain Vexstar, who had finally managed to find a section of his ship where gravity was still pointing in the correct direction, approached the communication panel with the defeated air of someone who had just learned that his life's work was actually a galactic crime spree. Admiral Rodriguez, he said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Council and my crew, I would like to formally apologize for the unauthorized collection of your planetary representatives. We have agreed to all terms proposed by Diplomatic Representative Martinez, including the immediate cessation of all specimen collection activities and the establishment of proper diplomatic protocols for future interspecies contact. Also, Tommy's voice added cheerfully, they're going to pay for shipping costs to return everyone to their home planets. and they've agreed to let Destroyer keep one of their ships as compensation for emotional trauma. He's really excited about it. He's already started making improvements. In the background, the unmistakable sound of something being enthusiastically dismantled could be heard, accompanied by happy honey badger noises. 3 months later, the Galactic Council had issued the landmark Martinez Destroyer Accord, which established universal guidelines for interspecies contact, and included a specific clause known as the Earth Amendment, that essentially stated, "Do not abduct humans under any circumstances. Seriously. We cannot stress this enough." Tommy had returned to Earth as a hero, though he was still grounded for missing dinner without calling first. His mom had been surprisingly understanding about the whole accidentally becoming humanity's first galactic diplomat thing, but was extremely firm on the importance of proper communication regarding meal schedules. Destroyer had indeed kept the alien ship, which he had systematically redesigned according to honey badger engineering principles. The result was a vessel that looked like it had been assembled by someone who had never seen a spaceship before but had very strong feelings about structural integrity and the proper placement of claw sharpening stations. It was, according to alien engineering experts, completely impossible and utterly indestructible. The Galactic Council had also discovered something remarkable. Humans were exceptionally good at solving problems that other species considered impossible. Within a week of Tommy's return to Earth, the Council had received 17 formal requests for human consultation services on issues ranging from stubborn planetary defense systems to bureaucratic inefficiencies that had plagued galactic governments for centuries. Tommy had started a consulting firm called Martinez & Associates Problem Solvers, with Destroyer as his chief technical advisor. Their business card read, "No problem too big, no solution too unconventional. Satisfaction guaranteed or your galaxy back." Their first client was the Centauri Collective, who had been struggling with a rebellious artificial intelligence for over 50 years. Tommy solved it in 6 hours by teaching the AI to play video games. The AI was now happily running an intergalactic gaming tournament and had completely forgotten about its plans for digital domination. Their second client was even more interesting. The peaceful planet of Harmonia had contacted them because their local wildlife had become too polite. Apparently, their ecosystem was collapsing because all the predators kept apologizing to their prey before hunting, giving everyone time to escape. "So let me get this straight," Tommy said, reviewing the case files while Destroyer examined the technical specifications of Harmonian wildlife. "Your tigers say, 'Excuse me,' before pouncing, your sharks ask for permission before biting, and your bears send formal written requests before entering caves?" "Exactly," replied Ambassador Trilliana of Harmonia via hologram. "It's been going on for 3 years. Our ecological balance is completely disrupted. Everything is too nice to function properly." Destroyer chittered thoughtfully, then gestured toward the files with what Tommy had learned to recognize as his "I have an idea" expression. "I think Destroyer's got a solution," Tommy announced. "We're going to need about 50 Earth documentaries about honey badgers, 3 crates of Earth coffee, and a really good sound system." "Earth coffee?" Ambassador Trilliana looked puzzled. "Trust me," Tommy grinned. "Once your wildlife learns about proper attitude management from Destroyer here and gets sufficiently caffeinated, your politeness problem will be solved in about a week." And that's how Tommy Martinez, 8-year-old from Earth, and Destroyer, honey badger extraordinaire, became the galaxy's most successful interspecies problem-solving team. Their next case involved a planet where gravity had started working backwards. But that's a story for another day. The important thing was that the galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate the problem-solving capabilities of a human child and a honey badger with a shared sense of justice and a complete disregard for the word impossible. After all, the universe was a big place with a lot of problems. Fortunately, it now had Tommy and Destroyer on the case.